Welcome in for another episode of the Silver and Blue Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Sanchez. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Corey Douglas. Corey, we got a big game this week. Just another, that's how it is at the Cowboys. Feels like just about every game is important and big. And they got another one this week as they head to Minnesota to take on the 8-1, surprisingly 8-1 Minnesota Vikings. Should be an interesting matchup, and I think we're going to find out a lot about Dallas. And we talked about this on our last pod. We're going to find out a lot about Dallas over this 2-game stretch with at Minnesota and the Giants at home on Thanksgiving. We're definitely going to learn a lot.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at coming off a disappointing loss to Green Bay and, all the negativity that seems to be surrounding that football game and blowing that 14-point lead in the fourth quarter, you look at these next two games in 5 days where either, the panic button is going to be at an all-time high or, after these two games, you'll kind of be feeling good. You could either, be sitting at, 8-3 possibly and feeling pretty good about yourself, especially after Philadelphia. Last time we talked, Philadelphia hadn't lost, so I think that loss kind of changed the perspective of a lot of people as well. But yeah, these next two games are important. I don't think you can overstate how important these two games are, and we'll kind of see how the Cowboys react, especially on defense. Is kind of what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the Philadelphia game. Yeah, that was huge for Dallas. And honestly, the Eagles losing to Washington more or less kept Dallas alive in the division race. Falling, I guess it would have been 3 games back of Philadelphia, and Philly has the tiebreaker so far. That really would have hurt Dallas. And per 538, Dallas's chances of winning the NFC East actually went up last week because it's really important that the game Philadelphia lost is a divisional game because let's say Dallas and Philly finished with the same record. The next tiebreaker, so they do head to head, and obviously Dallas needs to split with Philly, but the next tiebreaker is division record. So Philly losing to Washington was massive. So we'll get into that later in the show, the potential division race. But let's start with just the importance of this game and just some questions Dallas needs to answer coming in. Injury wise, Dallas is a little banged up. We got the news today that DeMarcus Lawrence thinks he has something fractured in his foot that's probably related to his injury last year, which is really alarming to hear. He says he's dealing with injuries in both feet and a right knee issue, which he said is actually the pain is worse on the knee issue than it is his feet. He said he still plans to play Sunday. I'll have to see that to believe it. And I personally would rather he not play because Dallas is going to need him later in the year. And then we're still waiting to hear Anthony Brown's concussion issue. We're going to see if he passes concussion protocol on Friday. But he said he feels good. So we'll know more about Anthony Brown tomorrow, which he's kind of the Dallas defense's whipping boy, but he's really important. People like to give him a lot of flack. Dallas is going to need him on Sunday. So that's where Dallas is at kind of injury wise. They have a few nicks and bruises here and there on the injury report, but those are the two that I'm looking at. It also seems like Zeke is going to be back this week. So I assume we're going to go back to RB2 Tony Pollard, unfortunately. But yeah, Dallas is a little nicked up, and that DeMarcus Lawrence injury is really concerning.
Yeah, and trying to kind of to go along with that, he actually did his weekly radio hit about an hour ago now, or about 40 minutes ago, and he sounded like when he first answered the question that it was like no doubt he's gonna play, but by the time he finished talking, it was kind of like I'm just taking it day by day, and we'll kind of have to see what it's looking like by Sunday. So that kind of put I feel like his status a little more in doubt because when he's coming out and kind of teetering that fence, we don't know how bad the pain is for him. And Demarcus Lawrence, I think of as a tough dude, but when you have those foot injuries and something that you've already had to deal with that caused him to miss a lot of last season, it's definitely concerning. On offense, I am actually pretty excited to get Zeke back, just because I just feel like we need that extra dimension on offense, especially where you know we've struggled, at the receiver position, and I think this is going to be a game where the tight ends and running backs are going to be very important to kind of keep that Minnesota Vikings offense off the field, having to deal with Justin Jefferson, T.J. Hawkinson, and Dalvin Cook. So I think those are, that's an encouraging sign that he is, trending towards playing Sunday. And then, we'll kind of see with the Anthony Brown thing because, I just mentioned Justin Jefferson, and he's a problem. So,
Yeah,
we're going to need all hands on deck
that's
to
one way
deal
of
with that
saying it.
matchup.
That's one way of saying it. Justin Jefferson is absolutely a problem. Um, but yeah, I really think this win is going to matter for Dallas on multiple fronts. Um, this is going to matter for playoff seeding. This is going to matter in keeping up with Philadelphia. And it's just going to matter for confidence because let's face it, Dallas hasn't won a big road game against another contender in a while. I mean, hell, a big game against a contender in a while. It seems like over last since last season, every time they've had one of these big prove it spots, they've come up short. Be it the Kansas City game last year, the Arizona game in January, San Francisco in the playoffs, Tampa Bay on opening night this year, um, the Eagles game on Sunday night. And I know Dak was out, but and this week against Green Bay, I know Green Bay isn't contenders, but last week was kind of a chance for Dallas to exercise some of those demons. They blew a 14-point lead. We've harped on that enough. Coming in, this is a 8-1 Vikings team that I don't know how I don't know how they size up compared to other 8-1 teams that we've seen. They have a really suspiciously low point differential. They've won a lot of close games, a lot of close comebacks. I mean, let's face it, they should not have beaten Buffalo. If Josh Allen doesn't fumble a sneak at their own one, giving the Vikings a chance, that game doesn't turn out that way. But that's the nature of the league. So I think we're going to find out a lot about the Vikings this week. And honestly, I know we don't talk about spreads and gambling very much, but the spread on this game is very suspicious. Dallas, a 6-3 team coming off a pretty bad loss, is favored, I believe, by 1.5 in Minnesota
Hmm.
against a red hot 8-1 Vikings team. Maybe Vegas knows something we don't. Um, but yeah, this is a big chance for Dallas to assert itself as what I would imagine, I guess, at this point would be the second best team in the NFC.
Yeah, I think some of the confusion around this 8-1 Minnesota Vikings team is one, to your point, they've played a lot of close games. But then when you look at a lot of their wins, I mean, they beat the New Orleans Saints, they beat the Lions, they beat the Bears, they beat the Dolphins without Tua, they beat Arizona, who was struggling, they beat Washington, and then they beat, a Buffalo team, like you just said, they shouldn't have won that game. So I think that is part of the reason. And then they got smoked on Monday Night Football against, another 8-1 team in the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think that's kind of goes around to the surroundings, or I guess the thought around this football team. But I will say that this team is a team that has shown that they can find a way to win.
Yeah.
Whether it be luck or just find a way to make enough plays down the stretch to kind of pull out these football games. So I think it's going to be important because the Cowboys, they haven't necessarily shown the ability to pull out some of these close football games. And when you're going on the road into a hostile environment against some guys with or some teams, with a lot of guys that can make plays, yeah, you're gonna have to answer to that. I don't know about the spread though. Like that seems a bit suspicious to me. I kind of related to, not related to, but compared to, Texas being favored at home against TCU in college
Yeah.
this past week, and we kind of saw how that played out. So it's very curious. But Vegas is typically on top of these things a lot of the time. But I think this is going to be a tough matchup, not only for the Cowboys, but I think Minnesota's looking at this as, this is a damn good football team that the Cowboys are bringing in here as well. And this is a team that's beat us the last couple of years, including last year with Cooper Rush. So, I mean, they're not overlooking this either, I don't think.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. Let's start with the Dallas offense against the Minnesota defense. Um, I'm looking at the Dallas offensive line. Here's where I'm concerned about this matchup. Um, this Minnesota pass rush can get after the passer. Just looking at who they're trying out there, I mean, Darius Smith and Danielle Hunter are just a terrific pass rushing duo. I believe Zadarius Smith leads the league in pressures at at this current moment. But yeah, they Dalvin Tomlinson, one of their defensive ends, is was a DMP this week, so that is something to keep an eye on. He's one of their key players up front. But yeah, this is a really good Minnesota defense. They can be had in the secondary for sure. I'm not a big fan of their secondary. I think Patrick Peterson is a bit past his prime. Caleb Evans, one of their rookie corners, who's played a lot for them, was also a DNP this week. Harrison Smith seems to be past his prime. This Viking secondary can absolutely be had. You look at their defensive rankings, and I believe they're 26 in pass defense right now. That overall it's a pretty good defense just because of their pass rush, but on the back end they can absolutely be had. And this game's going to come down to, in my opinion, whether or not Dallas can protect Dak Prescott, because frankly, the Dallas offensive line, we're starting to see some cracks in the foundation, especially at left guard with Connor McGovern. Tyler Smith is starting to struggle a little bit more and more. I believe he has 8 penalties and 9 starts, and he gave up 2 pressures. Terrence Steele, who's still been really good this year, he's sort of come back down to earth. This game's going to come down to whether or not Dallas can protect Dak Prescott, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about the secondary and how they can be had, I think what can hold the Cowboys back, and something that has kind of reared its ugly head a few times over the past couple of weeks, is just the miscommunication or lack of communication between Dak and some of his receivers and tight ends, especially CD Lamb,
Mm-hmm.
who is probably going to be matched up with Patrick Peterson a lot. This past week, Patrick Peterson, I believe, had 2 interceptions, so he still can make plays on the football if given the opportunity. So I think that's something that the Cowboys are definitely going to have to clean up. I saw a quote from Dak Prescott today, saying that on those 2 interceptions, that, if he gets those same looks again this week, he would rip it off 100%, no questions asked. And he guarantees that it would be a different result. But, we got to see it on paper, because, like I said, this is not the first time that we've seen, especially miscommunication or lack of communication or lack of
Yep.
reading on CeeDee Lamb's part. So I think that's the one thing that can hold this matchup back. But I think the Cowboys do have an area to exploit the tight ends this week. Minnesota's ranked near the bottom as far as covering tight ends, as far as yards per attempt, yards per catch. So I think that's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
matchup. It could be, Dalton Schultz game and Hendershot, and then Jake Ferguson. I think they have an opportunity to all make some plays this week, and I think it's going to be crucial.
Yeah, looking at Eric Kendrick's Pro Football Focus numbers, he is one of their lowest graded players in coverage on the team, and which is kind of shocking because he's, for his career, he's been one of those guys that can really cover and just sideline to sideline. But maybe it's age. I'm not sure, but yeah, he has a coverage grade of 38.6 from Pro Football Focus. In coverage, he's been charged with 26 catches for 300 yards and looking at 1 touchdown in coverage. So he's definitely looks like he's struggled in coverage. Harrison Smith has been a bit better, but looking at just purely yardage numbers, one player that's been attacked a lot, by far the most yards given up, is Chandon Sullivan, who has given up 42 receptions on 50 targets for 541 yards. So I know we keep talking about it, but this secondary can absolutely be had. And my biggest thing is how Dallas tries to neutralize that pass rush. And I do think you mentioned the tight ends. Maybe Dallas goes, and Dallas has been really good in 12 personnel, 13 personnel with those tight ends on the field. Maybe Dallas
Mhm.
leans on that a little bit more this week and tries to take advantage. But it's going to be all about 11 personnel is what you have to live in and what you have to succeed in. And Dallas has struggled with that at times, especially in terms of protection. So, yeah, I really think for the Dallas offense, this game starts up front.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't accomplish anything on the offensive end without making sure that you have guys blocked up front, and especially when you're going against a talented defensive line like this, it's extremely important. I think when you look back to a couple of matchups against the Eagles and Washington, Those are a couple situations where they kind of struggled, more than they have the rest of the season. And when you look at those fronts, those are physical fronts. Those are guys that can really get after the passer. And if you can't block this team, Zadarius Smith and Daniil Hunter and them guys, they are coming and they can force, takeaways on the football. And, that's one way to get run off the field on the road.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, the key matchup this week I think is going to be it's going to be the Cowboys tackles. That the Cowboys really need a good game from Tyler Smith and Terrence Steele because, again, Zadarius Smith has just been a terror this year, and then Danielle Hunter, who isn't far behind him, is one of the best edges in the league as well. I'm really concerned about this Minnesota pass rush, but we've seen Dallas, handle some pretty good pass rushers so far this year. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how Kellen Moore handles those guys because, and again, I do think there could be some more 12, 13 personnel this week. I want to make sure that, if I'm Kellen Moore, making sure I'm utilizing the play action, but you can't do that if you don't think the protection is going to hold up. And one thing that needs to get solved that really they've struggled with, overall it's been fine since Dax returned, but in Green Bay, Dallas was horrific on third and fourth down. Dallas really got killed on the money downs this week. And in reading Bob Sturm of the Athletics breakdown of the offense, I believe Dallas only converted 4 third and fourth downs, and I want to say 3 of those were like 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, where Dak just kind of snuck it. So that's going to be something to monitor. But yeah, I'm really curious to see how the game plan looks coming out this week after how things kind of grinded to a halt against Green Bay. Because overall, you look at the numbers, the Dallas offense had a good day in Green Bay. It just, in those key moments is where they came up short.
Absolutely. And, this is one thing that the Cowboys have kind of struggled with all season. And a lot of people, when Cooper Rush was, making his starts during that run, they're like, well, that's one thing that's going to improve when Dak Prescott comes back. And it just hasn't materialized that way. And, what do you hear coaches say all the time? Situational football is what dictates these games because a lot of these games are going to be played within 6 to 7 points. And if you aren't converting on third downs, extending those drives, you're going to overwork your defense. And then, you're not obviously not going to be on the field on offense to score points. So that just kind of compounds itself and, works definitely against you. And then again, once again, on the road in a hostile environment, you're going to have to be able to make some plays to quiet that one. And then more importantly, keep that offense off the field for Minnesota because, they can wear you down with Dalvin Cook. They can make some explosive plays with Justin Jefferson and now TJ Hawkinson there. And, don't sleep on Osborne. Don't sleep on Thielen. These are all things that are going to be very important, especially when you consider the Cowboys are struggling in the secondary as far as injury goes. You talked about Anthony Brown's status earlier in the show, and, they can be exploited. And, we saw what Bland looks like. We saw what Joseph looks like, and it wasn't pretty.
Not pretty.
Christian Watson going for, 3 touchdowns and over 100 yards when he hadn't done that all year combined. That's a problem. And that's something that Minnesota definitely saw on film. But something else they saw on film is that running attack. And I think the Cowboys defense knows that. So now we can see if they can do anything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at the Dallas defense because a lot of these questions that you just mentioned some of them with the cornerback depth. A lot of these questions about the Dallas defense are surrounded around this run game. And now with DeMarcus Lawrence, I'm assuming out, who is by far your best run defender, you're going up against an offense that has a pretty damn good offensive line this year. They've done a good job protecting Kirk Cousins and behind and they've been able to clear some lanes for Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. So, Dallas is going to be tested up front this week against the run. I'm wondering how Dan Quinn looks to bounce back. It looks like, and we've talked about this, is the Dallas defense up front stunts more than anyone in the league by far. And the trade-off of that is if you call the wrong stunt at the wrong time, Teams can catch you in a really tough run look, and we saw that multiple times on Sunday where Dallas got caught in a bad spot in the middle of a stunt where Green Bay had the right play call. So I'm really curious to see how Dan Quinn's game plan changes, to see how much Dallas stunts. Um, and especially what this run defense is going to look like without Demarcus Lawrence, because frankly, that's a little bit of a scary thought given how things have gone recently for Dallas.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's been highlighted since Sunday's game is just guys. I mean, Michael Parsons talked about this at length in his post-game press conference. Ron Curse talked about this. He made sure that he was talking to the media this week for about 6 or 7 minutes, and it's just guys being undisciplined, staying in their gaps. I mean, Dante Fowler, for one, it's definitely been highlighted. And I kind of felt like Michael Parsons and Ron Curse were kind of calling him out without mentioning his name because obviously you don't want to open that can of worms. But on the Aaron Jones touchdown run, you have everybody else twisting and stunting, and then he's kind of doing his own thing over here, trying to
Mhm.
get to the passer, and it opened up a huge hole for Aaron Jones to, eventually score that touchdown. So I think those little things like that, where guys are just kind of making, for lack of a better word, selfish plays, those get you in trouble in those type of situations when you have. I mean, they always say NFL is the ultimate team sport. One guy not doing his job can set up the whole defense or the whole offense up for failure. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of, especially in the run game. So I want to see how they go about that this week. I want to see if there's any changes as far as maybe Dante Fowler.
Mhm.
Maybe you're not playing as much this week. Because if you're going to go out there and put the other guys, at harm, you can't play. You can't be on the field. So I want to see what adjustments Dan Quinn makes, and I want to see just a better performance this week. And because you know what Minnesota's going to do,
Yeah.
Ron Curse mentioned it during his press conference this week. It's like, yo, we struggled with the outside zone plays against Chicago, letting Montgomery, Herbert, and Justin Fields get out to the outside. What did the Green Bay do the first play of the game? They ran straight to the outside. That is on tape. So what can you do about it to fix it? That's going to be very important, and this is a very good test for this Cowboys defense. And like I said at the beginning, I want to see how they respond to it.
Yeah, this is officially an issue. The run defense, and teams aren't stupid, and they're going to keep doing it until you can stop it. Um, and obviously, Minnesota has the horses to do so. One thing I'm looking at with Minnesota's offensive line is Ed Ingram on the inside has been really poorly graded in pass protection. He's been charged with 37 pressures this year, surrendered, and he has a pass blocking grade of 34. Ezra Cleveland at the other guard spot has also been pretty rough in pass protection. I'm interested to see how Dan Quinn attacks the interior of this offensive line, because Bradbury at center is decent, but they've really struggled at the guard spots, and Minnesota has some pretty good tackles. So the weakness is definitely in the middle of that offensive line. I wonder how Dan Quinn will attack that, because Christian Darrisaw has been one of the best tackles in football this year, and Brian O'Neill is just always solid at right tackle for Minnesota. So that's one area that I'm going to keep an eye on for sure. But we've been talking about the run game and stopping the run and taking advantage of our offensive line. We haven't even mentioned Justin Jefferson yet. Him and Adam Thielen have been, you know, one of the best receiving combos in the league now for a couple years. Most of that, Thielen's kind of fallen off a bit, but Jefferson, in my opinion, is probably the best receiver in football right now. I would say him, or maybe Stephon Diggs or Tyreek Hill, or probably, either way, he's in the conversation. And Dallas is going to have their hands full. Trevon Diggs traditionally hasn't been a traveling type corner. So this is making me think, man, you're really going to need Anthony Brown this week. And that Dallas is going to need Malik Hooker to be better as well. I thought Malik Hooker really struggled last week against Green Bay, which was kind of his first bad game of the year. Dallas played a lot more man coverage on Sunday, so maybe Dallas goes back to primarily zone. We'll have to see, but yeah, definitely looking for a better day from the Dallas secondary, because they surrender some big plays.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at Justin Jefferson's 2 games versus Dallas. In 2020, he had 3 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown. Last year, he had 2 catches for 21 yards. He didn't score in that one, and I believe in that game, Trevon Diggs in their matchups, I think held him to one catch for 3 yards or something along those lines. Um, that I think I'm not really putting a whole lot of weight into those numbers because they're using Justin Jefferson a whole different way this year. This is a guy, Kevin O'Connell, that came in and he's putting him more in motion. He's really
Hmm.
looking to get Justin Jefferson the football at all times, getting him on those good matchups. And when you talk about, or when you look at how the Rams kind of deploy Cooper Cup, Justin Jefferson, they're doing the same thing with him in Minnesota now. So he's become even a better player. I mean, you look at the catch he made on 4th and 18 this past
Oh
week,
my
just
God.
absolutely ridiculous.
Catch of the year.
Contested one-hand catch. I mean, one of the best catches I've ever seen in the NFL for sure. So this is something that I don't even know if, even if Trevon Diggs was a traveling corner, I just don't know if this is the game to do it almost because you mentioned Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne's a problem. I mean, they have a lot of talent and they're doing a lot of things to get Justin Jefferson the football. So it's going to be interesting to see because, like I said, two catches, 21 yards last year, and then only 86 the year before. I mean, those are numbers that you would take in this matchup for sure if, those are the final numbers that you get on Sunday. But I just don't think it's going to be like that. So it's just going to, we might look up and see Justin Jefferson with 100 yards, but it's kind of like the same game plan that we had against Cooper Cup. You kind of got to let him get his, but you can't, let him, have that game breaker that he's capable of having.
Yeah, and we haven't even mentioned T.J. Hawkinson, who's one of the better tight ends in football. You're going to need a big day from Jaron Curse in terms of erasing the tight end because that's kind of what he's paid to do because that's what he was so great at in 2021. But yeah, I'm really looking for a response from this Dallas defense. But I'm just concerned about Demarcus Lawrence's injury. Micah Parsons just has been really banged up. I thought it was interesting. Parsons played primarily off-ball linebacker against Green Bay, and he looked a little lost, and maybe that's some rust because he's been playing mostly defensive end. I think Dallas would be smart to, keep creatively deploying him, but I think he needs to be mostly at defensive end now. Playing, and it seems like they're going to get Anthony Barr back this week, so maybe that'll help. Maybe another week of Damone Clark, developing. They give him more of a role, so I bet we get more of Micah up front, especially if Demarcus Lawrence is out, which it seems like that's how it's going to be. But yeah, it really, really interested to see how Dallas's defense responds because we may have been a little bit quick to crown them as some people are throwing around the 85 Bears and all these lofty comparisons that the Dallas defense got. It's time for them to respond because they've been hit in the mouth a couple times recently. So, and even great units have off days like that. Dallas is still one of the best defenses in the league. I'm just very worried about Demarcus Lawrence and his health and where that leaves this team. And, frankly, Micah Parsons' health as well, just because he's clearly been playing banged up. He was wearing a shoulder brace last week. He's had that groin issue. I'm just curious to see how they respond because, again, they've been kind of hitting the mouth, especially this past week against Green Bay.
Yeah, and kind of regarding Michael Parsons, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago as well, is how these teams are starting to kind of put him in these actions and kind of running right at him, and it's kind of neutralizing kind of his effectiveness, especially if you're going to put him at off-ball linebacker. I mean, it's easy to, all right, he's there, so we're going to kind of run right at him to kind of neutralize, his speed and kind of make him think. And then if he's playing a position that he really hasn't played a whole lot of in recent, games, as in his pro career, I mean, you're going to see some of those struggles, and then you factor that on top of some of the guys being undisciplined and not being where they are. He's having to cover for certain guys in certain situations that he shouldn't be having to. So I think all of those things combined, along with his health, are definitely problems. And I think we're going to find out, probably after the season that Michael Parsons has been dealing with something, pretty significant. And he's just kind of been battling through it. But, we have to find a way to get him in, situations. This is
Yep.
on Dan Quinn, to get him in situations where he can be effective, get him in, those one-on-one situations, kind of like the Rams do with Aaron Donald, pick a matchup and let him attack it. But I definitely want to kind of see some of that. And this is a big Dan Quinn game. I
Yeah.
need to see some adjustments for him. I mean, he's been kind of the untouchable coach around here, and he's been the head coach in waiting. He's been labeled that by a lot of people, and it's time for him to kind of start making adjustments as well now. He can't just keep running out these same schemes, same different things, and saying I trust my players. I trust my players. Well, no, you got to put the players in position to be successful, and like I said, this is a big game for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that's kind of the theme of this week is adjustments. On both sides of the ball, just how they respond. This is a big response week from Dallas because, again, their two losses, not obviously the Tampa Bay one was its own thing, just from Dak being injured. That's its own separate catastrophe. And then, the Eagles game, you didn't have Dak. You hung in there. You actually felt okay coming out of the Eagles game. I think this is their first, at least at full strength, since at least since the 4-1 run where we got the season back on track. This is the first real adversity they've faced, just in terms of since people have come around on Dallas and viewed them as a contender. Uh, this is their first real adversity, so I'm looking forward to seeing how they respond. And honestly, this feels right now before this game without this win. If they go and get this win, this feels a lot like 2021, and we're kind of trending that direction at this point. And it's up to them to show whether or not they're different than the 2021 team. So it's a big response week for Dallas. Let's get into predictions. I'll let you go ahead and drop your prediction first.
Ooh, I've been back and forth on this all week, and I'm still not 100% confident in kind of what I'm about to predict here. Just because I feel like there's so many factors up in the air, and then when you factor in that the success that the Cowboys have had in recent years up in Minnesota and just finding a way to win, I think they do it again. I think they go up there, get Zeke back. I think they, fix some of the things that they get on offense. I think this game is going to be, a little bit high scoring. I'm not sure what the over under. I believe I saw it was like 43 and a half or somewhere in that range.
Let me look
I
real
do think
quick.
they cleared. I think they cleared that because I think the Cowboys are going to win. Or go ahead.
It's 47.5 right currently.
47. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, I still think they let's see. Yeah, I still think they clear that. I think the Cowboys win 27-24. It's going to be definitely a back and forth battle. Like I said, I think the offense responds. I don't think they have the lows that they had against Green Bay. They find a way to, make one more play than Minnesota, and kind of Minnesota's quote unquote luck kind of runs out in
Mhm.
these close games this week. And I
Yeah,
think the Cowboys bounce back and get to 7-3.
yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think this maybe not a super high scoring game, but I can't believe we haven't mentioned him the whole podcast. But I think this is going to be a big CeeDee Lamb game. I think he took a really big step against Green Bay. I know he caused the second Dak interception, but overall, that was one of the best games and probably the best game of CD's career. I think he takes advantage of a susceptible Vikings secondary. And I think, we get a more consistent day from the Dallas offense. And, I think Dallas gets a big win. And I think we find out a little bit about Minnesota's issues that, they're a good team. Don't get me wrong. But some of that 8-1 record is very much luck driven. So we'll see how things play out. But I think we get a big day from Dak and the in CeeDee Lamb on Sunday. I'm gonna go. I was thinking 27-24, but I'm not gonna do the same score as you. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Dallas. Dallas 31, Minnesota 21. I think Dallas wins going away, and this kind of feels like a spot, especially when like you think about the spread on the game and how weird that spread is, where maybe Vegas is thinking this might be the spot where the Vikings luck runs out. I think Dallas wins this game somewhat convincingly, but that if they're able to pass protect and take advantage of the Vikings struggle stopping tight ends, I think Dallas comes away with the win. So I'll go 31-21 Dallas in a somewhat high scoring game.
Yeah, and I think one thing also with the CD Lamb thing, I think this game always comes around, at least this past couple of years, since Justin Jefferson's kind of taking that leap. A lot of guys are saying that Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in the class, which I think based off just what's going on so far in their NFL careers, although
Yeah.
it's been only like 2 or 3 years, this is a game that CD Lamb should take personal. Like,
Yeah.
that guy across from you is a beast, and you're trying to get to that level now, being able to take over as a number one receiver here in Dallas. So yeah, go out and put on a performance against a vulnerable secondary, and kind of show like, no, Justin Jefferson, it's not as far apart as you guys are making it. And I think that's something that the old 88, like Des Bryant, Michael Irvin, Drew
Yeah.
Pearson, I think those are the type of games that those 88s kind of stepped up and thrived in.
Yeah, I completely agree. So yeah, I just think this is just a big statement game for Dallas. Um, and maybe it's the fandom clouding me, but they've come up short in these statement games recently, and I think they come up with a big win here, and they keep pace with Philadelphia. Because I'm gonna go ahead and assume Philadelphia is gonna take care of the Fighting Jeff Saturdays on Sunday. So,
Mhm.
we'll see how things shake out on Sunday with the other teams in the NFC East. But um, I said at the beginning, and I'll say it again. We're gonna find out a lot about this Cowboys team in these next. What are we at? 14? No. I guess this next week. Yeah. So
7 days, yeah.
these next 7 days, we're gonna find out a lot about this team. So, uh, unless you got anything else, Corey, let's get on out of here. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure to check out our Cowboys page at Cowboys News 365 at Dallas and at Dallas_fanatic for our main page, where you get all of our other coverage on the Stars, Rangers, Mavs. Check us out on Instagram at DAL Cowboys Fanatic. You can get Corey on Twitter at the Mr. Douglas with 2 S's, and you can get me on Twitter at Nate_Sant77. Thank you guys for listening. We will talk to you next time on the Silver and Blue Podcast.